The dust of Silver Creek was painted gold by the dying sun. For the third time in an hour, Elias Kane pulled the worn telegram from his breast pocket. The words were seared into his memory, but he read them anyway, a desperate prayer, arriving on the noon stage. Stop. Eleanor. The noon stage was gone. Its dust had settled hours ago. The town was quiet, too quiet. Elias stood alone on the wooden platform, the weight of his Colt Peacemaker a familiar comfort against his thigh. He had sold 3 prime cattle to pay for Eleanor's fare. He had built a new room onto his cabin. He had dared to hope for a future beyond the lonely silence of his ranch. A hollow feeling, colder than disappointment, began to gnaw at his gut. This wasn't just a no-show. This felt wrong. The station master had avoided his eyes, muttering about, "No women on that coach." The sheriff was conveniently out of town on a patrol. Driven by a rising unease, Elias marched to the post office. Old man Higgins behind the counter flinched when he entered. "No mail for you, Elias," he said too quickly, his eyes darting to a small, discarded scrap of paper near the trash bin. Elias's gaze, sharpened by years of spotting coyotes in the brush, followed the look. He strode over, ignoring Higgins's squawk of protest, and picked it up. It was a torn piece of a telegram, just the top half of the received message. It wasn't his. It was addressed to the sheriff. The few legible words made his blood run cold. Cortez gang. Suspected of. Territory. Extreme caution. Bait. Bait. The word echoed in the silence of his mind. He thought of the money he'd sent, the detailed letters about his life, his isolation. The perfect target for a trap. Elias stumbled out into the twilight, the paper crumpled in his fist. He wasn't just a lonely fool. He was prey. And as the shadows lengthened around him, he knew one thing with terrifying certainty: Eleanor wasn't coming. But someone else was. And they weren't coming for love. The moon was a sliver of bone in the black sky. Elias sat in the dark of his cabin, every creak of the timber sounding like a footstep. The torn telegram lay on the table before him, the word bait screaming up at him. They had used his hope as a weapon. Now, anger began to replace the cold fear, a slow-burning fire in his veins. A sound. Not the wind. The sharp crack of a twig under a boot heel, 50 yards out. East. Near the old corral. Elias moved like a ghost. He blew out the single lamp, melted into the deeper shadows by the window, and eased his Colt from its holster. His heart hammered against his ribs, not in fear, but in anticipation. The hunter was about to become the hunted. He saw a figure then, a darker patch of night moving cautiously toward the cabin. It was too slight, too graceful to be one of Cortez's brutish men. The figure tripped on a root, stumbling forward with a soft, frustrated curse. Elias's breath caught in his throat. Eleanor. Had he been wrong? Was this all a terrible mistake? For a fleeting second, hope flared again. He watched as she reached the porch, her form visible in the faint starlight. She was beautiful, with eyes wide with a fear that mirrored his own. She raised a hand to knock on his door. And that's when he saw it. The glint of cold, polished metal tucked into the belt at the small of her back, mostly hidden by her shawl. A small, deadly derringer. The hope curdled into something bitter. This was no victim. This was the lure. The beautiful, helpless woman to draw the lonely rancher out into the open. Where were the others? Watching from the tree line. Moving in for the kill. He made his decision in an instant. He wouldn't wait for them. He would change the game. Just as her knuckles were about to rap on the door, Elias yanked it open. He didn't aim his gun at her. Instead, he moved with the speed of a striking snake, clamping one hand over her mouth to stifle her scream and pulling her inside, into the darkness of the cabin. She struggled, her eyes wide with genuine shock now. He kicked the door shut. "Welcome to Silver Creek, Eleanor," he whispered, his voice low and dangerous. "Now, you're going to tell me how many men are out there and what they really want. And you better talk fast, before your friends decide to come in shooting." The woman, who gave her name as Clara, trembled in the dark. Elias kept his hand firm but didn't hurt her. The derringer was now in his pocket. "They have my brother," she choked out, her voice raw with real terror. "Cortez said if I didn't play the part, didn't get you outside, they'd kill him. They're not coming for you. They think you're hiding a fortune. Army gold from the war. They think it's buried here." Elias stared, stunned. The Cortez gang. Army gold. It was a legend, a ghost story old-timers told. He owned a dusty ranch, not a treasure vault. His dream of a simple life had been shattered for a fairy tale. Just then, a voice cut through the night from outside, harsh and impatient. "Clara. Quit playing with him. Get him out here or the boy gets it." The game was up. Clara's eyes filled with tears of desperation. Elias saw the truth in them. She was a pawn, just like he was. A plan, desperate and reckless, formed in his mind. He wasn't just fighting for his life anymore. He was fighting for hers, and her brother's. "Listen to me," Elias whispered urgently, shoving his spare revolver into her hands. "They think I'm the enemy. You're their inside woman. Use that." He told her his plan in quick, sharp sentences. Taking a deep breath, Clara turned toward the door. "He's tied up," she shouted, her voice shaking convincingly. "But he's heavy. I need help." A moment of silence, then a grunt of approval. Two figures emerged from the shadows, holstering their guns, thinking the fight was already won. They stomped onto the porch. As the first man pushed the door open, Elias was waiting. He didn't fire his gun. He swung the heavy iron poker from the fireplace, catching the lead outlaw square on the jaw with a sickening crunch. The man dropped like a sack of stones. The second man fumbled for his gun, but Clara was faster. She raised Elias's spare revolver, and with a cry of rage and fear born from her brother's captivity, she fired. The shot went wide, but it was enough of a distraction. Elias was on the man, disarming him in a brutal, close-quarters struggle. When the silence returned, it was over. The two outlaws were unconscious and trussed up. The third, Cortez himself, had fled into the night upon hearing the shot, leaving his men and his hostages behind. Elias stood panting, looking at the woman who was supposed to be his bride. She wasn't Eleanor. She was Clara. And she was a fighter. The first light of dawn began to bleed over the horizon, washing the land in pale, hopeful light. "The sheriff will be back by noon," Elias said, his voice tired but clear. "We'll tell him everything. And then, we're going to find your brother." The mail-order bride hadn't shown up. But something else had, a partner. And a purpose far greater than either of them had ever imagined.